Thanks, Colin.
Okay.
Colin Giltrap for New Zealand, and they are going well. Now, let's just remind you once again of the grid for this feature race here at the Euro Speedway at Lausitz. And lining up on pole position as a result of his earlier win, it is Nicolas Lapierre for France. But Neil Yarni, who's raced against him regularly this year, will be right there on the inside in second. Nelson Piquet Jr. and Johnny Reid of New Zealand. Germany and Malaysia next up on row number 3, and then watch Sean McIntosh and David Martinez go for it. Two youngsters really trying to make their names. Two drivers with F1 experience on the 5th row, Furman and Noda, then Enger and Scheckter, followed by Matthias Lauda and Ananda Mikkola. Australia and India line up on the 8th row of the grid. On the 9th row, it's Italy, who've got some work to do after receiving that penalty for passing under yellows in the sprint race. And then watch out for the drivers at the back. From the Netherlands, from USA and from Great Britain, Jos Verstappen, Scott Speed and Robbie Kerr will be going for it. There's no doubt about that. And we're just going to have to see how much progress they can make from the very back of the grid.
Well, that's going to be a little bit of a problem, I think, because you've got two very quick cars right on the back row of the grid, and then you've got the slower end of the field directly ahead of them. Now, that's going to fan out coming into turn one. They've got to be, on the one hand, thrusting and aggressive to try and force the way through as soon as possible, but equally they've got to respect and understand that everybody's got to get through turn one, and there's no point driving over somebody and then ending up as you were at the end of the first corner of the first sprint race.
36 laps, the feature race, so we're looking at a double race distance to the sprint race earlier on. Now, the pit stops, we may well see one or two of the teams, John, I think, coming in very early. They do have to do a complete racing lap and come over the start-finish line at least once. But I know that one or two teams are considering coming in for a very early pit stop.
That is the option that teams have got. Some will clearly come in maybe after 2 laps. Some might determine to stay out for maybe mid-distance, somewhere around 17, 18, 19 laps. Others might, if they're in a strong situation, maintain an advantage and then come in later in the race. Of course, you've always got the situation of possibly having a safety car out as well. So that's something that's unpredictable. So it's a gamble as to what you do.
Well, the build-up continues to the start of the race here, the feature race, the second race of the day at Euro Speedway Lausitz. And it's now time to hear from Sheikh Maktoum. We're just waiting for Sheikh Maktoum to move into position to give the announcement for the start of this race. An announcement which he was so proud to make at Brands Hatch to get the whole series underway. And it's almost time once more. The tyre warmers are being removed now from those big slick tyres. Those rear tyres in particular, rear wheels, they are very large indeed. And when it comes to the pit stop, those mechanics, only one mechanic per wheel. He's really going to have a struggle getting the new wheel there, the new tyre there, and getting ready to do it.
Danke Deutschland. Thank you Holland fans. Thank you Germany, South Africa, all of you for coming. Thank you. Gentlemen, for the pride of your nations, start your engines.
So the signal's given and it's time to get the engines fired up. The grid is being cleared and we are now preparing for the second race of the day. It's the feature race for the A1 Grand Prix of Nations at the Euro Speedway. And as everybody heads away from the grid, it'll be France and Switzerland to lead them away on the green flag lap.
Yes, just one lap back onto the grid. And then when everybody has come onto their start positions, then the lights will come on, and then once they change, go out, it will be start 36 laps, mandatory pit stop. But remember what we saw in the first race. It looked awfully easy for the front row. Nicolas Lapierre and Team France did a great job as we looked down at Brazil.
Problem for Brazil. Mechanics still on the grid, and this is beyond the 30-second signal. They might have a penalty as a result of this.
But still, the cars behind will get clearly Germany is able to clear that.
And New Zealand stalled as well. New Zealand stalled on the grid too. Oh, what dramas. What dramas indeed. And this is going to make a big... Oh, and finally Brazil gets underway. Now, he's got away before the last car. so he will be able to take his position, but he had a guy on the grid beyond the signal, and I think he may end up getting maybe a drive-through penalty or something.
Yes, certainly there will be a penalty, I think, to Team Brazil, but Team New Zealand still on the grid. No one at all going to the aid of Johnny Reid, so his car stuck there. It will be either pushed off the grid if they can get the starter to him and get him started up. Well, it is being, in fact, pushed away to the safety of the pit lane. And well, what are they doing? There are problems there as to whether the car should be started on the grid or pushed into the pit lane and start from the pit lane.
Oh, this has certainly put a cat amongst the pigeons. That's going to change things, and a great shame for New Zealand. They just claimed second place in the series after a good first race, but things all going disastrously wrong for them now. At the back of the field, Jos Verstappen weaves around to get some tyre temperature. Every car that has a problem up ahead is certainly good news for him.
Well, we saw two cars in the pit lane before they went onto the grid having a problem. They managed somehow to stall them, and there are two cars in the grid as they're about to parade, go on this final lap, Brazil and New Zealand, and of course two of the front-running teams.
They are going to form on the grid again, and the race distance has been reduced to 35 laps. So this lap has been taken off the race distance. They will reform the grid. It'll be a complete restart from the original grid position. So completely abandoned, but the race will now be one lap shorter at 35 laps.
Well, by that I take it that there will be no penalty for Brazil or New Zealand. Everybody will take up positions that they were on a few moments ago, and then they will go through this procedure once again when they will set off on this exploratory lap and then come back onto the grid positions, and the race then get underway.
So it's a little bit of a full start almost for these guys. There's USA and Great Britain at the back of the field. But everybody now will simply have to make their way onto the grid once again. All the mechanics are allowed to take their positions, and it was just a disaster for Piquet. The mechanic was still there, and then of course for New Zealand a stalled engine and nearly hit by Malaysia.
Yeah.
Well, dramas as we tried to get the feature race underway initially. This was the replay of what happened, and Piquet finally was able to go.
And what's even more frightening was that another mechanic was actually under the rear wing of Piquet's car trying to get it started. From that head-on shot, he couldn't see it. So two engineers from the Team Brazil team, and there we look at Reid for Team New Zealand trying to get his well, he's just shaking his head. I've got no engine, I can't get the car to move. Well, really, the situation with Brazil, where there were still those two engineers on the grid as the field moved on, that was potentially frightening.
Yes, that's right. Thankfully, the driver's behind, or the driver immediately behind, was aware. It's really behind him that the problem comes, because Germany could see there was a mechanic there. Timo Scheider was all right. But behind him, Canada, Sean McIntosh, wouldn't have had much view.
Certainly he would have maybe seen the one mechanic standing up, but he would not have seen the second one, who was crouching down with the air starter trying to get that Team Brazil entry started. So there we have confirmation, lap 35 of our main feature of the feature race here this afternoon. And let's hope we have no more problems with stalling. Yeah,
so a confirmation there. The race will now be 35 laps. It's been reduced in distance by 1 lap. And Lapierre and Niliani not aware perhaps initially of the problems as they set off on the green flag lap. Now the 3-minute signal is now being given once again. It's a countdown from the 3 minutes. It's a complete restart. And let's hope that Johnny Reid is able to get off the line cleanly this time. New Zealand have got another chance here, but there's an awful lot of activity around the Brazilian car.
Yes, the team looking around at the computer plugged in to see if there's something that has not been properly set. So I don't know really why things should have changed between the end of the sprint race and the start of the feature race, because Piquet had a pretty good run in third place.
So everybody in their original positions now. The race doesn't count to have started, so it's complete restart from scratch. No, it's as if a race never got underway, and it didn't, because all we had was the formation lap, and that doesn't count. So the only difference is that we've got a race distance of 35 laps, and around the French car, a little bit of a top-up of fuel there, was it?
Yes, they were just making sure that there was sufficient fuel. They know how much they have, they know what amount of fuel is used, even in a slow lap, so they just put that small amount more in to make sure that they've got sufficient fuel, that they don't want to find themselves caught short literally. Even though this race is a lap shorter, they had to put that little bit in just